Okay, this is a tutorial on how to do your EdTPA section. It's kind of flipped on purpose because next year you'll work alone and you'll work in the field, and having you work through it now, I think really will simulate and better prepare you for next year. At least that's the feedback I've gotten. The first section on here you'll see is sample context, who you're teaching. And that is not a part of this assignment that you really have to analyze or write up. But just to visit it and kind of tell you what happens in this section, you'll get a sample context of who you're teaching. And we'll discuss this after our work at home, where the type of school you are, the special features of the classroom, the grade level, how long the class runs, the textbook, and then it kind of moves to the kids with special needs in your class and how you will deal with them, and the kinds of groupings that you do. This is a very vital part of EdTPA, and before you do your segment, you may wish to look it over because you're going to find elements of it in the writing. Now, each of you will be assigned a task, and I think task one involves the most input, so I would recommend that you divide that between two students. So two students might do components 1 and 2, and the others 3, 4, and 5. And let's visit what the sample planning segment is. You click on it, and of course it's going to say download it, and that's kind of vital. And as you download it and kind of open it, you'll see, it'll say planning competency, central focus. And this one says the central focus of my lesson is the Roaring Twenties. And it isn't, because you're going to take that out. And in that, you're going to put your unit. And you're going to describe in detail the way they did. And just to make it obvious how much work you did, you're going to then highlight that in yellow. So this area will be highlighted in yellow, which I can't get to on my screen, but everything that you replace. And then as you kind of scroll through this, it says the learning segment begins with lesson 1, which is, and you'll input your information. Lesson C, explain how the plans build on one another. So each of these, you will input your material. Now you can keep material that she has, but as you go through here, there should be no mentions of the Harlem Renaissance, the Roaring Twenties. You will look through each line and then place your stuff. Section 2 is about students, and since you really didn't have a real class, I'd like you to read this and then incorporate with a little creative freedom, your own description. So 1 and 2 could be one person kind of filling this in and updating it, and then save it, with the highlighted yellow sections. 3, 4, and 5 are going to be a little complicated, but there's no way to learn about them without going through. They're about language demands. And my fondest hope is that after you finish this, you will meet as a group in a flipped classroom in the class and kind of go through those. So that's person number 1. And person number 2 is going to deal with sample instruction template. And this is the section of EdTPA next year where you'll videotape it. And again, the same format is true. Clip 1 is derived from my lesson plan, which discusses, you'll decide, let's put a clip that we want to talk about, kind of eliminate that, and put in your clip. Your clip will go right in there, and you'll describe it, replacing it. And again, you'll highlight it in yellow. So when I see a lot of yellow, I know you really made this your own. You only need to analyze 2 clips. But you'll see as you go through this, you can adapt. You're not really going to have time, so you can use the times that are there or make up your own. And you'll kind of work your way through and borrow, adapt, steal, but write up what would be a creative EdTPA submission for this portion. The third section we go to now, as we kind of move back, is called assessment. And assessment is the section here when you download the assessment tab, and I kind of open this one. You've kind of planned the lesson, now you've taught it. Now it's really important that you assess it. And so the first part is relatively easy. What standards are you doing? Common Core, all of this will be replaced with your standards. You know, they'd be typed in blah, 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 blah. Okay, but then as you move through the data, you're going to see like a chart on how kids did. You can borrow that if you want, or if you're really creative, you can kind of input your own chart based on your rubric. And you're going to find as we move through this, and I'm not going to go through every line here, but you'll go through it line by line. And really the truth is, I'm trying to get you to experience it, because you're going to go to a lot of meetings where people are going to talk about it, and it's actually more anxiety producing to talk about it than do it. You won't love me for this assignment because it's time consuming and it's tedious, but so is EdTPA in a way. So your assignment is worth 10 points, and the first 5 are going to be analyzing, you know, each of you writing it up. But the next 3 points, which to me are equally valuable, is you're going to download the 5 rubrics that have to do with your segment. I'll give you an example. I mean, it's maybe a little easier if I can show it to you. You're going to get the EdTPA handbook. I'm sure you're going to get it 100 times between now and then. I got to download it first, sorry. I'm going to hopefully get a little better at this, but my first time. So you'll have the EdTPA handbook. It's going to give you the party line. This is why we do it. This is what we do. The famous, triangle template about planning leads to instruction and assessment. And it's going to explain everything. I wouldn't go in detail on this, what you have to do. You can look it over because it will give you a good background on your section, like task 1. This is what I have to do. But when you get to the rubrics, they're wide. See, now for the people doing planning, I want you to download the 5 rubrics. So if you're doing the planning, and the first one said, how do the person's candidates understanding build and support one another? And, if you think the plans build on one another with clear connections, you'll highlight that, and then you'll write an explanation down here. Why you think, why you'll actually become the EdTPA scorer. So you'll actually give it a score. And so you'll do 1 planning, and then how does your planning support students with varied needs? And then you'll do using knowledge to inform teaching and learning, and how the candidate uses his knowledge. And notice that if you can mention research, you're shooting for a 5. But you're going to just evaluate what we did. You're kind of stuck with the model we have, but this is a rubric-driven event, and if you can master the rubric, you can't fail. Identifying language demands, and then finally, planning assessments, all right? And now, the second session, instructing, it's going to tell you all about instructing, and then there are 5 rubrics for that. How does the candidate make a positive learning environment? How do they actively engage students in questioning? Student responses, how does a student use evidence from history to build and support an argument? That one warms my heart. And finally, how does the candidate use evidence to change teaching practice? Finally, the last ones, they'll tell you all about assessment. How does the candidate analyze assessment? What type of feedback does the candidate give to students? How does the candidate provide opportunities to focus on feedback? And how does the candidate involve students' use of language? And finally, how do they plan the next step? The key part in assessment is, did this all work? And so kind of at the end of this, we're trying to determine how effective it was. All of this will be discussed in class, but the instruction is flipped. If I were to talk to you at this, your eyes would fall out of your head. But by doing it, you'll have a little I'm not sure what to do, and we'll bring our efforts to class, and we'll have a real good idea about EdTPA learning segments when we finish. And the final one, which probably, if I know you guys, this is the one that you might be most concerned with, and this is the rubric that explains your grade. And if I kind of download this, and again, you kind of have to download everything. You can't kind of work live. 5 points are how completely did you deal with your section. So if the write-up completely deals with all 5 sections that you were assigned, there are no mentions of the Roaring Twenties. It's not like you skimmed it. And this is meeting expectations. You'll get 5 out of 5. Exceeding expectations, which I don't expect. It goes way beyond expectations. Not only are there no mentions of the Roaring 20, but the write-up was written almost as if it was an EdTPA submission. And I'll somehow, if you do that, you'll blow my doors off. I'll give you more. But one on this one is the write-up does not deal with all expectations. There are numerous mentions of the Roaring Twenties and few references to what you guys actually did. The second part, which is 3, is the analysis of the rubrics. And under this, I just want to make sure that you use all 5 rubrics and explain why you gave a score. If you give a score with only a brief phrase, you're going to get 2 out of 3. If you just highlight it, you're going to get 1 out of 3. And the last part is, I've had students write up this and deal only with their lesson. They didn't really mention another lesson. So the write-up deals with all lessons that are relevant in the write-up, that you really truly have mastered, that the write-up is not about one lesson, but it's about 4 lessons leading to deeper learning. And, you know, you're going to find that this is going to take time. It's going to be tedious. It might not be joyous, but I think it will be something that will make you finally get to understand what everyone's talking about. And what I have to confess is I think this is a worthy assessment, a more valuable assessment than a paper and pencil test on whether people should teach. So I don't really apologize for EdTPA as some of my colleagues at different universities do, because in the end, it will make you stronger. So good luck, happy hunting. I'm always around. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it should be something that you score well on and that you enter next year really prepared. You know, the other day I ran into 2 students and I asked how EdTPA was, and they said from all the work we did, it wasn't easy, but as I was doing it, I said, I know what this is, and that's my hope for you.